investors are not going to be building your company, right? There are three things that investors can bring. One is customers and partners. The second thing I was going to say is like money, not only like their money, but future money, like introducing you to other investors for this round or the next round. And the third thing is talent.
Hello, dear friends. This is a new series of our episode of our podcast, Ventures from the Valley. I'm Victor Arlovsky, founding partner at R136 Ventures, and we are talking today to my friend, to really fantastic person, 3 times co-founder and founder, Inaki Berenguer. He is a managing partner at LifeX Ventures, a venture fund that invests into intersection of AI and science. Inaki was a co-founder at CoverWallet, which we're very proud investors in. And CoverWallet launched in 2016, raised over 60 million from a bunch of really great venture funds, including R136 Ventures. Reached out quite significant growth with over 400 employees and was sold in 2020. Before that, Inaki founded a company called Contactive, and before that, there was a company called Pixable. So I don't know if Inaki was born to be a founder or he became a founder. So welcome, Inaki. Really great to see and to have you here.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you for the introduction.
So let's start with a little bit of your personal story. And obviously, there are many founders who are listening these stories and keep asking me questions and asking me to ask questions, this kind of great founders like you are. So you were not born in the US, right? You are not US-born entrepreneur, right?
No, I'm from Spain. I actually am from a small town in Spain, like near the Mediterranean Sea, in a province called Alicante. Although I'm not on the beach, like my hometown is about 1 hour inland from a working class family. But I did very well academically, and thanks to that, I was able to go abroad in a scholarship.
Well, my question is straight away here, Inaki. How many other people from this remote place in Spain whom you know, who were with you in your school, who were playing soccer with you, football with you in playground? How many of them ended up becoming 3 times tech entrepreneurs? Do you know more people like that from your childhood, from your beginnings?
No, definitely not. Actually, my hometown is right now is 9,000 people, and I would say that half of the people that went to primary school with me didn't go to university, and then obviously among the people that went to the university, their ambition was, or their horizon of what they wanted to do in life was much more modest. To do something like in a near city like Valencia, like a little bit more than 1 hour away. And for them, that was the horizon. And I don't know how I expanded my horizon. I guess that doing well academically helped a little bit because that helped me get some scholarships.
You were the best student in your class, right? You were exceptional.
Not only my class, probably in many regions in Spain. So let me tell you a little bit about that because I did very well academically, and especially math and physics, something like that. And I got a scholarship called a Caixa Foundation Scholarship to go to study abroad. I did my master and PhD.
Is the bank, right? Caixa
is the bank,
is
exactly.
Bank. Yeah.
It's the bank, but it's the largest bank operating in Spain. And they have the second largest foundation in the world after the Melinda Gates Foundation. Every year they give 500 million away. And so they pick the best students in the country to go to study to the top universities in the world. And it is based on merit. It's like how you did academically. And I did well in that interview, and I got the scholarship to do my master and PhD at Cambridge University.
How old you were there?
So that was right after my undergrad. I was 22 or 23.
Okay, 22. But can you like we go a little bit earlier? So even in like elementary school, did you like have you been like exceptionally good in academic studies?
Yes,
So
yes.
like
Like
from like very early childhood, you were
very
like
early,
very
very
exceptional.
early. Yeah, like without much effort, I was always the number one in my class. And even in high school, I was the number one. In Spain, there is something called matricula de honor when you finish high school, and I got that one. And actually, maybe we can go into that later because I have created a foundation with personal money to give awards to the best high school students in the region of Valencia. And I give them money that then they have to donate to an NGO or a nonprofit. But it's just to give awareness or like create awareness about these great students, so then some of them can follow my path in
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
Right.
That's a very interesting, Inaki. So my question is, what is it? There's something in your DNA? Is there something in your parents who has given you some, I don't know, North Star? I mean, why you were so engaged into academic studies? So you have kids, right? I have kids.
Yeah.
So are your kids somewhat like you are? Just frankly, I mean, are they like exceptionally like good and like the only one in class who like do it like through the roof? I mean, who are really kind of the best of the best of the best? Or you may not say that. Or I mean, that's very interesting question to me at least. I'm sure that other
Yeah.
parents like that, like asking like the same question all the time, right? What is the DNA? What is it from like I don't know your mental like mental wiring, if you will? I mean,
Yeah.
how come that you became such a committed scholar and a student?
Yeah. So actually, that is something that I wondered about my kids as well, because like my like when I was a kid, like I had to struggle. Like let me tell you a little bit about my story, family story. My father was born in 1924. I'm 48 at the moment. I was born when he was 52. So he was born in 1924. He didn't go to school. It's not that he didn't go to university, it's that he didn't go to school at all. He lived in the middle of the countryside. His family was taking care of a house that had a lot of land around that house to grow everything like vegetables, and they had like sheep and everything. So because they were far away from the city, he didn't go to school, but he was very smart. But they didn't have a role model about someone that had achieved a lot academically at home, because that my father, like he self-taught himself how to read, how to write, and he was reading a lot. He was very smart, but he didn't complete any degree. And not only that, my mother passed away of cancer when I was 2 years old. So imagine, like my father, I have three siblings, all from the same parents, and he had to take care of the four of us. We were not wealthy. We were not even middle class. So that was a struggle. So I think that in life, to do well, you need a combination. Like ideally, you should have a combination of IQ and that hunger to work hard, right? And if you have both, then you will do very well in life. And you have one and not the other, probably you will do well in life as well, but not as well. But obviously, you cannot go with one without the other, right? You need to work very hard and have high IQ. But having high IQ is not about being the 0.1% of the population, which I think that I was. But I think that it's just as long as you are like top 5%, top 20%, the rest is grit and hunger and working hard, right? Like I have a friend that says that in life there are four things that could not make you have a good life in when you grow up. One is IQ, the other one is hardworking values, the other one is money from your family, and the other one is beauty. And the more of those four that you have, the better you will
Which
do in
one?
life.
The fourth one is what?
Beauty, like being good
Beauty.
looking.
Okay.
But there are two of them.
I would add number 5 here. You can win a
What?
lottery. Number 5 is you just need to be lucky.
But of those four, actually, two of them, they like as you go older, like they go away, right? Like probably money and beauty. So IQ and like having something in your DNA, I don't know if it is DNA or values or something that you learn at home, from your parents or from your community that is making you work hard, or maybe your environment, right? And is that great that you show in life? So yeah, you need one or the other. I don't know my kids that now, like, I think that they are very smart and they are doing very well in school, but will they have that grit and that hunger? I don't know. Like, I remember that my first investor, who was chairman of the board, Bob Davis from Highland Capital Partners, and he was the chairman of the board. He was mentoring me in my first company that we'll go into that later. But he said, I don't care whether you are poor and hungry or you are rich and hungry. The important thing is that you are hungry in life if I'm going to be investing in you, right? I know a lot of people that grew up in a wealthy family and still they were working very hard. And I also know like people that grew up in poor families and they work hard, and some of them, they work hard. So it's not about whether you grew up with money or not. It's just some values that you learn at home.
Right. So curiosity is everything. And as Einstein mentioned, said once that curiosity is much more important than knowledge, right? And imagination. So you need to imagine and be curious, and that's what brings you to some level of success, if you will. So you were born probably with a very special DNA. I'm quite sure that like new generation of studies on DNA will find out why some people are so much curious and some not. And I'm pretty sure that just it involves at least some part of like energy of the person, like his inner energy and his ability to focus this energy onto certain things which are important for him or for her. But have you been born an entrepreneur also, right? I mean, my question is, when did you start your own like first business? What was your like first business attempt, even before you started startup? Have you, did you like consider yourself to be like an entrepreneur by nature, right? Because you worked for some time in large companies like HP, some other like NSC, a few others as a research engineer. What was your like first attempt of doing business? Was it back in Spain or in the US? So can you just remember that part of your journey?
Yeah. So actually not as an entrepreneur, but I started working like at a very young age, like when I was 15, 16. That is not very common in Spain that you study and you work in parallel. My father had retired, so I started like being self-sustained with my own resources, like working on the side at the age of 18. And I had been working, but always working for others. Actually, I thought that I couldn't be an entrepreneur. And I thought that if I did well academically, I was going to end up in a job that paid very well or in academia. And actually, I got that scholarship to do my master and PhD at Cambridge. Then I got another scholarship that they only give to one person in Spain. It's called Fulbright Scholarship. And I spent 2 years at Columbia University doing research. I spent almost 1 year at Princeton, attending classes at Princeton University and doing research there. Then I worked in consulting at McKinsey. And then I got another scholarship to go to MIT to do my MBA. But during all that time, I thought that I didn't have the skills to be an entrepreneur. And it's because probably I didn't have a role model nearby, right? I think that to be an entrepreneur, you need someone to inspire you, to make you believe that you can achieve things that are extraordinary, right? Especially high growth companies. Like, I'm not talking about the type of entrepreneur that is building a restaurant or like lifestyle business. I'm talking more about high potential business. So I thought that you didn't have the skills. I thought that you needed to, first of all, to have money in the family. Then I thought that you need to know about sales, marketing, HR, legal, none of the things that I knew. I knew about engineering, I knew about math, and I was working very hard and I was very smart. But until I was at Cambridge University, that is when I saw that the head of my research lab was a successful entrepreneur and he was also an academic. I was like, oh, how is this possible? Like, he's building this and there are people that give him money. He doesn't have to mortgage his house. And he can attract other people that can complement what he doesn't know how to do. And then I realized, well, if that is the case, then I can become an entrepreneur myself as well, right? And that's why it is so important to have someone that inspires you, like a role model, someone that is nearby. Because if you grow in a small town in Spain and you read about Elon Musk in Silicon Valley or Bill Gates in Seattle, or like, they don't share the same resources, like environment, ecosystem. Like, it's too far away. You are like, yeah, of course, like that can happen to him or to her, but not to me. Like, I'm in a different environment. Until you stay close to them, and then you realize that they are not that different from you. And that is really super, super important that you see, if they were able to do that, probably can do that as well. Because now that I know that person nearby, like, I don't think that they are that different.
Actually, I'm like you. I started my business actually with this fund, which I launched as a business where I'm a partner and founding partner when I was already 41, so 10 years ago. And I thought back then, and that was the only motivation I had, frankly, that I have to start my own business just because I'm already 40 plus, and this is the last time I may consider like becoming an entrepreneur. And I always was jealous to those people who worked for me, who ended up becoming entrepreneurs. Some of them were very successful, some not, right? But they were not scared to become entrepreneurs. And I'm like you. I was born in like academic family. I mean, my parents were extremely well educated, but they never talked to me, and I never had any example in front of me of people who were entrepreneurial. And that's like very kind of confusing, because my family is like Jewish family, and usually you would associate like Jewish families with a lot of entrepreneurial skills, which was not the case in my family, at least. And that's funny how I evolved to this, like, okay, let me try. And I was like knowledgeable by that time because I worked in large companies and I was occupying like top positions, right? So I could have continued doing like my corporate career, well, it was kind of a challenge for me. But anyway, so I think that both of us were not like born entrepreneurs. So I have like a lot of other stories from my friends. For example, I have a friend who is like very successful banker, and he launched his like own bank. He was like a founder of this bank. It was not a fintech; it was a proper bank. So it was like classical legacy bank. But he reached like enormous wealth. He's like one of like maybe not billionaire, but hundreds of millions of dollars in wealth. And I just asked him once, so how did he consider like becoming a businessman? He said, I wanted to be rich. That's the only thing I wanted. He said, when I just was like 11 years old, and they also Jewish family moved from Soviet Union to Canada, he said, I just looked into my first like magazine in English was Forbes. And I was studying English in Canada by just reading Forbes magazine, reading about these billionaires. And I thought I just need to be rich. So he had like this mentality to become rich, and that's how he became successful. Some others like have like the other considerations, right? Some really start business when they're like 5 years old, 10 years old, right? I mean, doing something, selling something, buying something. You okay? We can stop if you want.
No, I want to make a couple of comments about what you were saying. One is about this thing about someone that inspires you, that is a role model. And in today's world, you have podcasts like this one, and you can listen to stories, and then you can find someone that matches who you are. So you can reflect yourself like in the mirror with that person, and that is an inspiration. The other thing is that there are more biographies. There's the internet, but back in the 90s, it was very difficult to learn stories about people, and that you could pick and you can find someone that resembles you. That is number one. And the second thing about what you were saying, like someone that wanted to be rich, I think that to be successful, and when I invest, that is one of the things that I look for, is someone needs to have that hunger and that obsession and that irrational motivation to achieve something. And what is the motivation behind? Maybe it is like to become rich. Maybe it is just to prove to the parents that they are worth it. Maybe it is just that they have a chip on their shoulder. Maybe it is just to prove an old boss or the family. Like whatever the motivation is, it has to be irrational, right? Because you will have to work so hard and make so many sacrifices that unless that you have that motivation, you will never get there.
I agree. So my question to you, becoming rich, was it something important for you when you were in academics and then when you worked in companies as a research engineer? Was it something what really excited you? What really was like important for you? Or money was never kind of an issue and something what you would just desperately wanted to be like richer than you were?
I think money was important in terms of building a safety net, but beyond that point, like the wealth creation around CoverWallet or around Pixable, I think I was far beyond what I was looking for. What I was looking for is like learning in perpetuity, like challenging myself, the adrenaline of building something from scratch, proving everyone and my peers that I could build something from scratch. And entrepreneurship brings many good things. One is that like you build something from scratch. The second thing is that you pick the people that you are going to be working with, the culture and the processes, like how you are going to operate on a day-to-day basis. And you are learning in continuity. So all the good things about building a business are something that like are incredible in life. Obviously, it comes with a cost. That is like the sacrifices that you have to make, and those sacrifices are for an overall very long period of time. So, but it has multiple positive things, not only like making money.
Interesting. Okay, so let's start with your first virtual baby called Pixable, right? So you were CEO and co-founder of Pixable. So maybe you can describe a little bit of the thesis. What did you want to build? What you ended up building? What was that? How did you come to this idea? And what was the outcome at the end?
Yeah. So Pixable, I started it back in 2008, 2009, when I was graduating from MIT. I started that with a classmate from MIT, Andres Blanc, that now is one of my best friends. So we were co-founders. He had been a serial entrepreneur before going to MIT. He had built 3 companies with some modest success, like one of them got acquired. And we were building at the intersection of mobile, social, and photos. So very similar to Instagram.
What year was it?
So we launched in 2009. So remember, the iPhone launched in 2007, but at that point, there was no App Store. The App Store launched almost 2 years later, where third-party applications could be distributed to the iPhone users. So we were one of the first applications on the App Store. Actually, we had a lot of coverage from the New York Times, CNN, TechCrunch. We were in the news all the time. When Instagram grew to about 75 million users, we had close to 20 million. So we were smaller than them. Obviously, they became much larger. When they got acquired for 1 billion, we got acquired for 30 million. That was 2012. We got acquired in about 3 years after raising a little bit of money from Highland Capital Partners and Menlo Ventures in Silicon Valley, and $0 in revenue. So this was a company kind of built to be acquired. We had offers from many other tech companies, like the ones that you can imagine in Silicon Valley, but because Intel was paying in cash and the other ones were acquiring us with equity, we decided to take the offer from Intel. But I think that reflecting on that, in what category, I think that I have always been very good at anticipating mega trends and catching that wave of innovation at the beginning of the inflection point. And it's not one mega trend. It's usually like the convergence of multiple things. In that case, it was mobile and social and photos, right? And later we can talk about the other ones or what I'm doing now. But I think that is very important, right? Like catching the wave of innovation, because if you catch the wave of innovation, if you make mistakes, the wave will allow you to make those mistakes and still grow with the wave, right? So that company started in 2009. Both Andres and myself, we were co-founders and co-CEOs. And then in 2010, when we raised institutional money, the VC, like Bob Davis, told us, look, like you cannot have 2 CEOs. I want only one. You pick who is going to be the one, because when there is an issue or something, I have to know who I'm going to be calling, who is going to be the captain of the ship. So we had 50-50 ownership in terms of equity, but I ended up being the CEO, and he was the chief operating officer, the COO. Despite that, we continue with the same salary, same responsibilities, and everything.
Yeah. How did you decide who will be CEO?
Actually, we kind of flipped a coin. I don't remember how it was, but I was like, maybe I'm the CEO. I'm the COO. I don't know what is
That's
better,
the way
right?
to decide. That's the way to decide, to flip a coin. That's a
like
very nice way to do it.
Yeah, but that was an issue because he left the company like 8 months before the acquisition, mainly because we were overlapping too much, right? And when you overlap too much, it's not very, you don't give a lot of clarity to the employees. Actually, Pixable, after graduation from Boston, we moved to New York, and we moved there in the summer of 2009. Actually, it was right after Lehman Brothers, if you remember, and apartments were very cheap. That was good, but it was impossible to raise funding during that time. But during those 2 years, like we were overlapping way too much. We had there about 30 employees, and whenever I was traveling, people would ask him, and then whenever he was traveling, people would ask me, and then we were not consistent in the decisions, and it was very confusing for the day-to-day operation. So because we were overlapping so much, at some point he said, well, I'm going to move on and do something else. And he continued being one of my best friends.
You split in peace and without like any conflict,
exactly.
Right? So you decided.
Exactly. So he's an investor in my fund now. I'm an investor in his company. He has a company now called Fetcher that is doing very well. They have raised about 25 million in funding. So actually, we see each other often and we talk often. So like when you have been in business together as co-founder, usually when you have a good exit, that person is your best friend for the rest of your life. Because with him, like every week or almost every week, we would spend 1 or 2 days in San Francisco. And at the beginning, we were sharing the bedroom in the hotel, right? Like imagine, like not only you are working like 14, 15 hours a day, but you even share the bedroom, like when you are traveling, right?
But it not always ends up really in in good relationship. I mean, some co-founders split and like never talk to each other. Some really go and seek for some mentoring and stuff because it's like hard to work. So you resolve this possible like operational conflict within yourself and your partner, which is a great example of how this could be solved, but not, I would even say like quite a unique example, because usually it ends up in much bigger battles. Some are public, some are not, but the tension is almost always there. So
I think that, by the way, I think that it depends on the final outcome. You like when you split, you fast forward 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then there is an exit. If the exit is good and everyone makes money and it was a fair deal for everyone, like usually like that relationship goes well. The problem is when like
nobody makes money.
Nobody makes money, but not only that, like another person is spending another 2 or 3 years like grinding there, working very hard, and then like you start like it was your fault, like pointing fingers, and I told you so, and it is because of what you did at the beginning, and
Well, you said that you sold Pixable at 30 million market cap, which was really good. And you mentioned Instagram, which was kind of a similar thing, which was sold to feedback, but then Facebook, Meta now at $1 billion or more market cap. So, did you make some analysis, if you will, some backtesting on why Pixable was not at $1 billion exit? What went not exactly as maybe you could potentially made out of it? So was it a luck? Was it just the wrong timing, wrong model?
So there were two things, right? It is interesting because I would say that there were four things, right? But let me tell you first one thing. That is, at that point, there were more than 200 like photo app applications in the App Store, right? So having an exit that was 30 million was decent. And for me, like at the time of the exit, I had, I don't know, like a 20% ownership. So it was a good outcome after like 3 years of work, right? And like the reputation that you build, and you can move on and build something else in life. Considering that we didn't have revenue, it was a good exit. So we did well compared to 200 other players that have raised money, some of them from Andreessen, some of them from tier one funds. So, I mean, we are lucky we are happy with the outcome, right? But thing that could propel our valuation, first of all, being next to Facebook, right? So we were in New York, Instagram was in the Bay Area. I think that this type of acquisitions of companies that don't have revenues, they only have engagement and users and the team.
You moved to the wrong direction. You should have moved from Boston, following Mark Zuckerberg's way to the Silicon Valley.
Probably, but like the reason why we moved to New York is that when you build a company, it's not like taking a job that is 1 or 2 years, and then when you get tired, you move on. When you build a company, you build a company until like it gets an exit or you IPO, you spend it like 7 or 8 years. So you don't know for how long it is going to be. And being a European, I wanted to spend like the next few years of my life closer to Europe to attend weddings of friends, like family reunions, visiting family, and not missing out on those things. And I knew that I had some friends from Europe that moved to Silicon Valley as founders, and it's like a big struggle, like in terms of life. Like one of them, her father passed, and she didn't even go to the funeral because there was no direct flight and it was too far away, and these type of things, right? But obviously, like it had like a penalty in terms of valuation, right? So being close to the right ecosystem, that is very important, right? The second one is that we were not system of record. So Instagram, on Instagram at the beginning, you may not remember that, but they were building on top of Twitter and Facebook. So every photo that you were posting on Instagram would be shared at the same time on Twitter and Facebook, and all the interaction with those photos would happen on the other platform. So they leveraged the momentum of the other social networks for them to grow. For us, like we were not system of record, right? We were like aggregating content from other apps, but like every time that there was a photo, there was never a photo in Pixable. It was always pushed to other networks. So like after that, I realized that one way to build defensibility and a moat is being a system of record. So the switching cost is too high for people to switch to another platform, right? Like it's like in today's world, when people are talking about AI, whether you built an application on top of a AI or LLM platform, do you have any defensibility? Like traditional 101 theories about how you build a moat, about network effects, platform, branding, economies of scale, all those things are important, and we didn't have any defensibility where we had those users. So yeah, we had high engagement, but we were not like Instagram, that we were also like the system of record.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, let's move on. So Contactive. That's your next journey, which operated a big data platform for telephone calls, which was lately acquired by Thinking Phones, right?
Thinking Phones,
now rebranded as Fuse. So this platform was called Clink, right? So did you think of that startup already? I mean, not this idea, not a startup, even before you actually sold Pixable, or this was like a fresh new idea you came up with? So usually, founders, they not usually, but sometimes they get bored with what they do, right? And they think something else already before they actually manage to sell the existing startup, right? So was it like this new journey was like all fresh idea, or you thought through while you were CEO and Pixable?
Then when you operate at the frontier, you can always see what is next, right? So when you are innovating, there are two ways to do innovation. One is to take an existing technology to make something existing better and more efficient, like better, faster, cheaper, right? Like what I did at CoverWallet. The other way to do innovation is, thanks to new technologies, to do things that you couldn't do before, right? It's not that you can do something more efficient, but like new markets, right, that are being created. So contracting was in the second.
I would even say that your first example of better, faster, whatever, cheaper is not a true innovation, right? I mean, if you fall into better, faster, cheaper, then most probably you are not going to win. And if startups are pitching me something they do like X, Y, Z, but better, faster, or cheaper, I never buy in, as I know that there will be a next one coming who will do it even cheaper, faster, or better. So I always invest only into those who actually bring up this new wave of innovation and try to like build upon that, right? So when there are new tools or new technologies available which could be applied to a certain problem, and that nobody else ever like succeeded doing that.
I think it depends, right? Because we'll go later into CoverWallet. There was an insurtech. And we were taking an existing market that was 100 billion, and we were going to capture that market thanks to new technology. But we were not creating a new market. It's like $100 billion market in the US that we wanted to capture with new technologies. Versus like if we were doing insurance for crypto, right? If you are doing insurance for crypto, that is something that is completely new that doesn't exist. But going back to this thing about Contactive, so we were solving the problem of caller ID. You know that when someone gives you a call on your telephone, you see a 650 and you are like, who's this person calling me? And you don't have that data. If you go to Google and you Google that telephone while the telephone is ringing, sometimes you find information. And I was like, well, if I could do this manually, like probably there is something that I can do algorithmically that whenever I have an incoming call from my telephone I don't recognize, then like I look in a database that I have created. So what we did is create this database with about 1 billion telephone numbers, for every telephone we could find the name, and from the name maybe the email, and from the email the LinkedIn account, and if it is a business, the Yelp or OpenTable or Google Maps information. So then when you have an incoming call, in less than 1 second, our platform could give you information about who's calling you. And as a user, like we had a free product, but then we had a B2B business model offering this to call centers. So when you call American Airlines, and instead of asking you, like, can you spell your first name and last name, they have all the information about you, but in some cases also your LinkedIn contact and so on, right?
So you switched from a consumer app to B2B, right? That was your switch to B2B business, more or less.
Yes and no, because part of that was like the amount of social content or user-generated content that was on the internet, right? Why we could find this information is because users, like small businesses, put their information on Yelp or on Google Maps. You go to Google Maps and you put any telephone, you will find like whether that is a hairdresser, what is the address, what is the logo, what are the hours of operations. And from that, you can find their Twitter account. And from Twitter, like it's like leveraging user-generated content that my first business was also with that, right? So that's why I'm saying that when you are at the frontier, you see what can come next.
Agree. So your first startup was a consumer and second was a B2B. If you may describe these two businesses from inside, I mean, you had like experience in both, and then CoverWallet was another B2B, like small and micro businesses, but still SME, still businesses. Well, is there a difference between managing, setting up and like a B2B and consumer play? How different it is? How you build like these two companies? If you like differentiate within it, right? Not like, of course, like when you sell to B2B, you need to have like corporate sales, right? It's obvious, right? Sales department should be built differently. But is it reflected in the DNA of the company that it's like a different species, that it's like not the same species as consumer? So if you may just give a little bit of insight there, what you learned.
So first of all, like both companies were product first, right? It all starts with the product, right? Like you start with the product that has technology, and technology has user experience, and then you put marketing, and then you put sales, and then you put corporate functions, and that is the way you build a company. But Pixable, because we didn't have revenues, then you don't have like a finance organization, you don't have controller, you don't have accounts receivable, accounts payable, you don't have sales, because you don't have sales, you don't have like acquisition like in terms of sales, like manual sales, and then account management and account executives. It was like Pixable, it was all engineers, like product managers, front-end engineers, back-end engineers, platform engineers, user experience designers, and a little bit of digital marketing, right? Versus this company, like Contactive, that started looking more like a proper organization in which you have business development, you have sales, you have marketing, but different type of sales, different type of marketing, not the type of marketing that I had in Pixable. So this company was different, and those were functions that I didn't have experience with, right? I didn't know how to set up a compensation plan for salespeople, right? For that, what you do is you hire someone that has done it before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, sales is completely different plugin for B2B for sure. Although in consumer, you need to build sales at some point, right? I mean, obviously, if you are like ending up where Instagram ended, you do not need to.
Yeah.
But if you're building up Facebook or Instagram within Facebook, then you would think of monetization anyway.
And you have a strategic partnership like that we had at Pixable. We had a little bit of a strategic partnership because we were on Apple TV as an application on TV, and we were like in Roku. Do you remember Roku? That we were also one of the applications. So we tried to have the applications on other platforms for distribution. We tried to sign a partnership with Samsung, the smartphone company, so they could pre-install the application in certain products or regions. So you do a little bit of a strategic partnership that almost look like enterprise sales.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, can't agree more. So you had different co-founders at Contactive, right? So there was not like Andreas Blank, but like another people,
actually,
right?
It was the VP of engineering of Pixable. Actually, the CTO of Pixable moved on after the acquisition and built a company called Freshly that got acquired for $1.5 billion. So I'm glad that because he's a very good friend, now he's my investor because he got a good exit. But then the VP of engineering, that is probably one of the best engineers, if not the best engineer I have ever worked with. He joined me as a co-founder of Contactive. So then I brought him in. Interestingly, after that, he has done two companies, one acquired by Glassdoor, like the HR, like adding transparency to HR. And now he's the founder of a company called Cluster with K, that is going to be an interesting company. It's trying to build the largest data center in the world with distributed compute resources. But anyway,
I would love to speak to him for sure.
Actually, they were the first company hosting.
Plenty of opportunities for him.
They were the first company hosting DeepSeek in the US because DeepSeek is open source. And when they launched and everyone was talking about them, they were hosting DeepSeek in China. So they were the first ones. And now there are plenty of platforms hosting DeepSeek that they were the first ones.
You should not forget to introduce me to him. That's an interesting thing to consider for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, so he came in, so he knew a lot about the scalability, DevOps, back office, that for this type of application that were real time, that were very, very relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I can speak of Pixable. I mean, there is a term PayPal mafia, right? All those great entrepreneurs, starting with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, and ending up with Joe Lansdale and many others, and Max Levchin, right? And many others. So we can probably speak of Pixable mafia too. So there are a bunch of managers and talent and entrepreneurs you got together in Pixable who ended up launching their own projects.
Absolutely.
Which you must be very proud of. So
I'm very proud because it changed the life of many people, because thanks to their experience, like completing experiences, like from being a startup and being acquired, so you complete the cycle, that builds a lot of credibility to any of those employees for whatever they do next in life. So like that is one of the things that are more fulfilling about creating a company, that they change the life of those employees at a personal level, professional level, and hopefully financial level, either because their value in the market increases or because they make all the money through stock options.
Agree. I want to return back to this topic, but let's first cover your third virtual baby, which is CoverWallet. So you launched CoverWallet in 2016, and we were very proud investors, alongside with LifeX Ventures, Sigma, Founders Collective, and a bunch of other great firms. Tell a little bit of that. So you never did anything in fintech, insurance tech. How this idea has inspired you? So why did you decide to penetrate that market, and what did you want to bring in this market? So CoverWallet was also acquired by Aon.
It was acquired, but they could have gone. It could have gone public, right? That company was like the previous company were kind of built knowing that at some point we're going to sell it.
Yeah.
CoverWallet
built
thought that
built to sell.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Two companies were built to sell.
Kind of like you think that is going to be the final outcome, not like you are optimizing for that, but you think that is going to be the outcome. This third one, I thought that the outcome was going to be an IPO, and I was building the company for that, right? To be like an independent company, so you don't rely on anyone else. So CoverWallet
you wanted it to become your lifetime journey, right? Because
ringing the bell is the ringing the bell at like NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange is the ultimate high of an entrepreneur, right? Because you are successful not like because someone else is buying you, it's because you are independent, right? You are successful, right? So that is much more fulfilling that you are like successful because someone else is more successful than you and they buy you. So CoverWallet, like we use, or CoverWallet is like the leader in online business insurance in the US. So we help small businesses buy and manage insurance. Think about a startup, a barbershop, a restaurant, a contractor, a small construction company, a small logistics company. You all need to have liability insurance, property insurance, and workers' compensation insurance to operate at the minimum, and then other types of insurance like cyber liability and some other things. So we were helping all those 30 million small businesses in America buy and manage their insurance online. So a lot of data behind this, user experience, technology. So
and then I remember there is a lot of like mandatory there, right? Being a business, you must insure yourself in different ways.
Yeah, but I didn't know anything about insurance. I only knew that this was a very frustrating industry. Why? Because in my previous two businesses, I had to buy insurance. The first time in my first company, when I was told you need to buy insurance to operate, and I was like, okay, probably I can go to Google and search like how can I get the cheapest option of insurance? Go to a website, enter information about like my company name, my address, number of employees, revenues, or something. Click submit and pay with my credit card. But I was told that didn't exist. Instead, I had to go to a traditional insurance broker that there are more than 20,000 in the US and complete a PDF application that is 20 pages, and then scan that and wait for 2 or 3 days and wait for a quote. And when you want to make a payment to activate the insurance, it's a wire transfer that takes 2 or 3 days, and only at that point is activated. I was like, this process that is so long, frustrating, analog, I'm sure that with what I know about online technologies can be done like in a simpler way, right? So I didn't know anything about insurance, but then I was told that there were 30 million small businesses. They pay $3,000 or $4,000 a year. This is a $100 billion market, bigger than like food delivery in the US. It's like, how is it possible that there is no way to do this online, right? So the first thing I did at the end of 2015 with another classmate from MIT that was also in New York at the time was to get the license to be an insurance agent or an insurance broker, right? So before starting the company, we spent 2 months like going to classes and passing an exam to become, because this is a highly regulated industry. And so that was the first step. And then the rest is kind of history, because as soon as we incorporated the company, I raised $2 million the first week. Like having 2 exits in the past helped me raise money very quickly. I recruited top talent from day one, people that were top notch, also very expensive. But it was like from day one, I was putting all the pieces to build a huge company. And this had been one of the fastest growing companies in the US in financial services, because we went from 0 to almost 100 million in premium revenue in less than 4 years, 0 to almost 500 employees in less than 4 years. I didn't take a single day off in 4 years, not even weekends, right? I was working nonstop, but this grew so rapidly that in year 4, we did a partnership with Aon, and after 3 months of the partnership, Aon decided to acquire us. So,
Or you decided to sell to Aon.
I decided to sell.
It was a mutual decision, yourself and Aon and investors.
It
So
was a
why you
mutual
decided
decision.
to end this business in hands of really very good company, but still, why you decided not to fight till ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange?
Yeah, the offer made sense. It was hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, I still own a big percentage of the company, because if you think about how quickly everything happened, I didn't have time to get diluted. Like, usually you get a lot of dilution when you stay in business for 8, 9, 10 years, because you have to give stock options to employees, round of financing after round. In my case, everything happened so quickly that I was like, well, maybe this company can go public in 2 or 3 years more, but who knows what can happen, by the way. Like, later, COVID happened, right? Like, we sold the business in January 2020, and COVID happened in March 2020, so 2 months later, right? But we're like, this is a fair price.
You know that you don't know how, actually, you do know, of course, because CoverWallet was operational back then, but I mean, by the way, COVID hit you badly? I mean, CoverWallet, or it was
actually
an opportunity to grow, right?
It's shocking, right? Because the category of business insurance, like became smaller during COVID, because new businesses were not opening, right? You are not going to open a restaurant in the middle of COVID. That was the type of businesses that were coming to us. But the very few that were starting, they were picking online options. So the total market became bigger, but our sub-market, that was the online piece of that market, became much bigger. And actually, we had a competitor called Next Insurance that did very well during that time, that has been recently acquired for $2.6 billion. Probably have seen the news. So they were our competitor. We were doing a little bit better than them, but they have been like for another 5.5 years grinding there. It's true that the exit has been billions and not hundreds of millions, right? But both of us did very well after the acquisition because of the online nature. Like, if you were going to operate a small business during COVID, you would adopt online insurance, online payroll, online banking, online everything, because you're not going to go to a traditional bank in the middle of COVID, right? So that was good for us, but who knows, like, what could have happened?
I agree. So Inaki Berenguer, CEO of Pixable, CEO of Contactive, and CEO of CoverWallet. Are these 3 different persons, 3 different CEOs? How did you evolve? What you learned through being a CEO in Pixable, and then CEO at Contactive, and CEO at CoverWallet? So what did you learn? How did you change your management style? How did you change your attitude, if you will? So obviously you became more matured, and what kind of mistakes you stopped making? So if you may just describe your journey as a CEO and as an individual, that would be very interesting to know.
So if you ask anyone that has worked for me, they will tell you that I was a very demanding CEO. I expect a lot. I pay people very well, but I'm very demanding. And people that have been in 2 or 3 of my companies, they will tell you that the culture of those companies is very similar. How I run the company, like, despite that they operate in different markets, some with revenue, some without revenues, but in all of them, for example, would have daily standards. Daily, not weekly or monthly, right? Company-wide standards, right? Like, that is very unusual to see.
Standing up in front of you.
Well, not in front of me, like, because...
Well, I'm kidding. Yeah. I mean, you're a general and they are just
No,
marching.
what I'm trying to say is that stand-up meetings, like it was like something that was only 15 minutes, no questions allowed, and 15 minutes every single day at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then the head of engineering, the head of product, the head of marketing, and the head of something else give an update about what is happening on that day. That usually you don't have updates from yesterday to today, but at least you repeat the same thing so people understand the cadence of what is happening in the company. But there are certain things about how I run my companies that has a very strong culture. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but it's very unique, right? So if you have been working for me, you will tell you that I have a very differentiated culture in the companies that I have created and built. And I think that is important, right? Because employees, they are part of something that is so strong that, like they will learn what they like and what they don't like. So when they move to the next company or when they create the next company, they can pick what they like and not take what they dislike, right? So I think that is important to be part of a company with a strong culture, because then it helps you make decisions like, oh, when I build my own company, I would continue doing that, but not that, right? I don't like the companies that, like, they read articles in TechCrunch about, oh, Google is doing that on a daily basis. Facebook is doing performance management that way, or this company. It's like, no, like, you have to have your own identity, right? You have to be unique in a certain way. Otherwise, you are going to be the cheap copy of Meta or Uber or Coinbase or Stripe.
But still, I mean, you should have changed over the course of 3 CEO cycles. What has changed? You didn't answer this question. So how did you evolve? I mean, have you become more demanding, even more pushy for results? Or you became like probably more, I don't know, accepting the failures? I don't know. You started less like doing things yourself and more encouraging people. You became more kind of an HR man than just a product man. I don't know. I mean, usually people change, and if you may reflect upon yourself, was there something what changed?
Actually, like, if I'm honest, I didn't change that much. And
so you repeated the story. You really liked what you did, and you think it worked out well. And
yes, that. I don't know if that is being stubborn or something, but I have been consistent. And by the way, like, this thing that you were saying about, I'm very demanding, but at the same time, I'm being very fair with people. So people, like, I have learned after like a few years that people like working for me, and that is leadership. Leadership is attracting talent and making them go in one direction, right? Well, it's attracting talent, attracting funding, attracting partners, but in particular, attracting talent. Despite that, I'm very demanding. I'm very direct. If I don't like what people are doing, I will be telling them right away, even if they have put a lot of effort in what they are doing. So I'm not like sugarcoating everything. It's like, oh, like, because I have put so much work into this is a good job. Like, if I don't like it, I don't like it. But people like me for some reason, and then they continue investing in me, right? Like, even LifeX, like, I have like more than 10 former employees that are not wealthy, and they have invested, like my co-founders have invested in my funds. So that is that they trust me. They think that when I'm under pressure, I have certain values and I act with integrity. That is usually like when you discover how people are, right? It's like when you are under pressure, how do you make decisions, right? So people trusting me, that is something that, as a reflection, is something that I'm very proud of. That, like, even if they were not part of the conversation, when I'm in a closed room, they can trust me, right? So, yeah.
Well, one more question about past, and then the rest of our conversation will be about present and future. So you had a bunch of investors in your startups, well-known venture firms, angels. So give an advice to founders who just start their journey. What the good investor should look like, how to choose like the best from the good, how to choose and how to prioritize, what to expect from the board members who are one of your leading investors, what not to expect. Can you just reflect a little bit on that?
Yeah. One thing that has to be very clear is that investors are not going to be building your company, right? I think there are 3 things that investors can bring. One is customers and partners. The other one is, that is like the second thing we're going to say, is like money, not only like their money, but future money, like introducing you to other investors for this round or the next round. And the third thing is talent, right? And then there is like, well, a little bit with the press. And then when you have a very difficult decision to make, you give them a call, and then like they will tell you, well, this other company in our portfolio, when they were in that situation, they did this or that. And obviously when investors have been part of high growth stories, then they have more opinions to share about how different founders behaved and made decisions under certain situations. But primarily it's like money, talent, and customers, right? Other than that,
let's take an idealistic situation. You have just let's forget about dilution, right? Obviously, it's better to be 100% owner of your company rather than just to be 50% owner of your company. But imagine that you are not dilutive still, and you have like two pockets: your own pocket and then pocket of someone else who can invest into you. Comparing apples to apples, does it make sense to have other people on your board? Doesn't it make sense? I asked once. I met Michael Siebel, founder of Siebel CRM, and then C3 AI, as it is called now. And I met him in his private estate in the Bay Area. I think that was the kind of a pivotal moment for him. He started this C3 company, and obviously he was one of the richest guys in the Valley because he sold his Siebel CRM, one of the fastest growing companies in the 90s, to Oracle, and he made really great returns from that. So he was very proud, telling me and my other friend who was there that he raised yesterday literally $30 million for C3. And he presented this opportunity to me and my friend, who was the important guy in the room, not I. So I was just accompanying him. And I was so surprised. I was still like in the corporate world back then. And I knew that he's like a billionaire. And I was thinking, and I just asked this question. I said, could you just explain why you have raised this 30 million? Because you have 30 million. Why you haven't made it yourself by just keeping all for yourself? And he said, Victor, you do not understand. This is the word of confidence that I'm doing the right thing. This is the word of confidence. So I thought that this is still like not an argument for me, right? Why do you need the word of confidence? If you are confident yourself, why should you have others to be asked, right, to support you? Anyway, so my question to you is, does it really make sense to have these people on the board overall?
Yeah. For multiple reasons, yes. The short answer is yes, but at what cost, that is a different conversation. But what they bring is checks and balances, right? At some point, like having someone on the board for governance is good. And we have seen so many stories about companies like lying, like things that you don't want to end up, and having the checks and balances of good governance, that is important for the rest of the shareholders as well.
Anchor, right? It's just stabilizing you. It just gives you some kind of
and it builds, like also like some discipline that maybe you need, maybe you don't. It's like having another boss, but it's not a real boss. But like, for example, having board meetings, I like in the early days, like board meetings every 2 months. So having a board meeting every 2 months is like a step back and taking a photo of how the company looks like, because otherwise you are too deep into the details of what is going on, what is important this week or today. But it's like a reflection of what has happened during the last 2 months, what I'm going to say that I'm going to be doing during the next 2 months, and whether I'm delivering on what I'm promising others, right? And it forces you, because otherwise you will always like push that. It's like, okay, I will do that exercise later, unless that you have a board meeting that forces you to have that discipline. So it brings a little bit of discipline. Second thing is that it takes a village to build a company, right? Like I think that I had the leadership skills to attract the talent, I attract the partners, set the vision, and so on. But like it was just like a team effort, right? Like someone with the spark to make that happen, but the real work is done by multiple people. And like investors bring other things that people in companies cannot bring, like opening doors in large companies, right? And then the third thing is related to what you were saying about Sibyl, is external validation about your valuation, right? Someone saying that your company is valued 100 million or 500 million or 1 billion, and people like putting their money where their mouth is, then that is an external validation that you are building something valuable, which is good or could be bad, right? Because if nobody believes that your company is valuable, then your employees are going to quit. And retention in startups is super important, right? So you need to have like this constant external validation that you are building and you are growing, because people are excited about things that grow. It's not about the culture. Like that is like, there are so many books that it doesn't matter what is your culture, as long as the company is doing well and is growing. Not as long, right? But usually like culture is very important when the company is doing poorly, right? Like when the company is growing, like I can give you like 10 different flavors of good cultures as long as the company was growing. Like the culture of Stripe, very similar to Google, to Apple. Like Apple and Google couldn't be more different. Both of them are great companies and retain talent. Why? Because there are growth opportunities for everyone.
Right. Well, let's go next. And your current baby and your current journey is the venture fund, which is called LifeX Ventures. I'm not asking why you decided to start a venture. That's a very natural thing for three-time founders who ended up really doing really well with every company being founded to start a venture fund. So you are investing into intersection of AI and science, and I would really want to have your thesis here about what would be this interaction going forward. So what's your view on, say, consumer world? So obviously we live in the end of consumer app cycle. I think for a few years already, probably 5 years, whatever, there is no appetite. There was no an appetite to invest into consumer apps, because everything what could have been tried was given a chance, and whatever worked, whatever didn't work, right, for some reason. And there is a new momentum there. So I believe that this agentic architecture is going to kill apps and bring up something new, agents or orchestration of agents, community of agents, whatever it is. So how you view this, but also the business world, right? So you were in both shoes, business, B2B startups and consumer, how this business will change over the course of this new revolution, how people will change, maybe society. So I would like you to think like broad, and I'm sure you're building up your thesis around this particular like this particular notions, right? So maybe you can just elaborate on that, and let's just have a dialogue on this.
Yeah, I think that during the last 2 years or 2.5 years since the day that in November 2022 when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, most of the success stories have been B2B, and especially Copilot. Well, a lot of infrastructure, like people building on top of you, not only LLMs, but a lot of orchestration layers, data layers, like speech synthesizers and things like that, or text-to-speech. But and now you see a lot of applications on top. Most of them are workflow automation, and you can call them copilots to make people more productive. And when I say people, are usually employees in sales, in marketing, lawyers, software developers, doctors, nurses, radiologists, and that has been the first generation. So you can call them B2B, but I think that especially 2025 and 2026, we are going to see a new generation of consumer apps, because the cost of developing a new model, like a business model, like an application, is going to basically zero. Like we have seen how you can do that with Lovable, Replit, Cursor. Like before, for example, to create a video game, a mobile game, it would take a few months and like a few employees. Now you can create 10 different versions of the same video game in less than 1 day, and you can see what works and what doesn't, and you start iterating on what works, right? And that is going to make everyone like experimenting, creating applications and seeing what sticks. And things that may look like a toy at the beginning, if it starts catching fire, then you try to optimize everything around it. And that is in 2025, because like everyone is talking about vibe coding, and that is this thing about not high quality code, but you can build something that have the function that you wanted. In 2 or 3 years, you're going to have another layer of AI that is going to refactor and optimize your code. Even if your initial code was crappy, like it's going to be good. Even if you had like 1 million lines of code, you will be able to refactor that in 5 minutes, right? So that is going to democratize innovation. So you are going to see all the possible permutations on innovations, right? That is what, like a lot of money.
It will also make scaling extremely more difficult, right? When you have an easy automation without like a special skills, right? You had to have like enormous skills to develop something 30 years ago, right? You had to really be like cutting edge, a professional, right? Top-notch professional to do some innovation. Now you can innovate without even writing a code, right? So it means that there will be thousands and thousands, now like thousands, no, there will be millions of agents or apps, right? How to find the one which you would invest into, right?
So you're going to be like science, So it will have to be based on data, right? Based on metrics, right? It's like you see what catches fire or not. It's like what I was saying about Pixable, my first company. The one that did better is because they had better numbers, because the defensibility of the product was not that high. Like building an application like Instagram, like without caring about the scalability when you have millions of users, but when you have thousands of users, building Instagram from scratch is very easy, right? I mean, we have seen this lowering the cost of innovation. Like you mentioned that in the 90s, if you wanted to build an e-commerce, you had to build your own payment processor, your own data centers and servers in a room in the closet. You had to build a database. You had to build an analytics tool. And then like you started having cloud computing, so you didn't have the data center. Then you had PayPal and Stripe, so you didn't have to build a payment processor. Then you had mixed panel and Kissmetrics, so you didn't have to build this. And then later you had Shopify, and you didn't even have to know a little bit about that. Shopify is just coming out with an idea and you build an e-commerce in 1 weekend. So the next evolution is going to be like another 10x, like a simplification about innovating, and people without software skill will be able to launch things that were only reserved for people with STEM backgrounds, right? And what works and what doesn't, let the market decide.
So you are an early stage investor, right? So you invest early stage, and maybe you can just a little bit elaborate about this AI part is clear. What is science? So when you speak of interaction of AI and science, what the term science for you is? I mean, are you investing in a kind of deep tech things? So something what is applied to science? I mean, can you just give a little bit of a color to this?
Yeah, let me tell you first what we don't do, and then I tell you what we do. Because our name is LifeX, people think that we do life sciences, and we don't do therapeutics. We don't do drug discovery, even if that is something that with AI, you can do that differently, right? But we don't do life sciences in the sense of drug discovery or drug development. Why? Because that is a different type of skills about how to build a company, and you have to do clinical trials, and it's more like project management. The way you build a company is very different to what we know about how to build companies, technology companies, right? We don't do hardware either. We try to avoid hardware because we think, from a selfish perspective, we think that the innovation cycles are too long. And every mistake is a very expensive mistake. Many things have to go right to build a successful company. And yeah, you can argue that SpaceX, Tesla, Apple have a hardware and that defensibility, but like many things can have to go right. In startups, like you already have a lot of things that can go wrong. Don't add other layers of risk.
Can't agree more. I am an investor in a couple of startups which they call themselves to be software, but they have some bits and pieces of hardware. And when you put like one piece of hardware, even a tiny thing, that becomes a hardware startup. And the whole spirit of a software company goes away. And now you deal with electronics, which is a completely different thing, right? If you can pivot, so you are here, so you were here, you are here, and now you want to pivot in software, you just simply move here. In hardware, you just need to start again from here.
Okay.
So wherever you've gone, you go back to level zero, and then you start again. And that's like, oh my gosh, how difficult it is.
Mistakes are very expensive when you have hardware. We know about Peloton, right? The cycling company, like the consumer product. Like whenever they ship a bicycle and then they have to do a product recall means taking like the bicycles from the consumer hands, bringing them back to the warehouse and then replacing something, right? Like with software, you just need to do a software upgrade remotely and it's fixed, right?
I love software. For the purpose of investing, I love software, believe me.
Yeah, from a selfish perspective as an investor, I'm not saying that hardware companies are not needed. Actually, I would love more entrepreneurs to build hardware companies, but the way I measure as an investor, my scorecard is money in, money out, and how quickly I multiply that money, right? I'm not measured based on like impact in society. And that has to be very clear because otherwise I would build a different type of fund for things that are needed in the industry. But not everyone can build everything that is needed in society, right? Like different people build different aspects of what is needed in society. So we have picked, like from a selfish perspective, AI applied to science. I want to say is like healthcare and life sciences, but those are software and AI businesses. And in the world of healthcare, it could be like all the AI voice agents, right? There is a shortage of nurses and doctors to monitor people with chronic conditions. So instead of like people in their 80s and 90s, when you don't want to keep them in the hospital, they are at home, and you want to call them on a daily basis a couple of times to see whether they slept well, how they feel, what they ate, whether they forgot to take the medicine. Those telephone calls, instead of being a human, is going to be a AI voice agent, and there are a bunch of companies doing that. The same thing for copilots for like oncologists, right? We have invested in two companies that is a copilot for the oncologist that based on medical images and blood test results, like MRIs and CT scans of someone that has cancer, decide what is the best combination of treatments. Because when you have cancer, there is surgery, you have chemotherapy, you have radiotherapy, and then you have immunotherapy, right? But they are not exclusive of each other. So what is the right combination? Right now, it's completely subjective to the oncologist based on their experience. But why not taking out of data about that patient, comparing that with the history, and AI copilots telling you, well, the chemotherapy, instead of doing that, or radiotherapy, instead of doing 10 sessions, we're going to do 5, and we're going to be spacing them 7 days or 2 weeks, or like that AI copilot is very good. Or for pharmacy, right, is like when you take a drug, you have like this prospect that tells you like, oh, don't take this drug if you have this and that and that. Like with AI, like you should be reading like all the history of that patient and giving you insights about that. But also the process of discovery of drugs is going to change dramatically. We have invested in a bunch of tools for life sciences that, if you think about life sciences representing a big percentage of the total GDP, like the cost of innovation is going to lower dramatically. Like we have invested in two companies focused on clinical trials. People think that when you are bringing a drug to market, the most expensive thing is the people like biologists and researchers
in the lab. 10 years ago, it was. Now it isn't. Yeah, the product development
now it is a clinical trial. It's a clinical trial. And clinical trial is done with pen and paper, right? So like how you pick the patients, how you onboard them, how you create authorization documents that give you the permission to do this, how you aggregate all this data, how you coordinate with everyone. With AI, you can optimize that process to make it faster and cheaper, right? And there's many things that apply to drugs, but like the same tools are being used in material science, for example, right?
Yeah. You know, interesting. I have two companies in my private portfolio. One, which is applying AI for diagnostics, and they actually, it's a European company, like former Russian engineers and like mathematicians who built up this company, and they are doing exactly the same thing. They're applying big data into finding soon enough, like really quickly after taking like the test tissues, biopsy, on whether immune therapy will work for this particular patient or not, and based on AI.
Exactly,
and
trying
another
to
company
predict the outcome.
yeah, and because otherwise you need to like seed this tissue, and then only in like 3-4 months you understand that yes, this therapy will
Exactly, it's
work
a
in
lot of
this group.
trial and error. Like instead
Yeah,
of doing trial and
and
error, it's like try
that's very
this and we go
expensive.
on board.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's very expensive. So this company with a very high level of prediction can point out only one or two the most probable immune therapy treatments for this particular subject. So, and another one is on the clinical trials. They actually automate clinical trials funnel. So a funnel is important because people do not want to participate. It's very expensive to find people for like trials, and it's like the most expensive thing, and companies are really working hard to bring these costs down to enable faster and smoother and cheaper, although I don't like these words, but inevitably this process has to change and that a lot. So that,
but let me tell you,
let
me tell you something about this, right? Because one thing is how the future is going to look like thanks to AI, and how the society is going to benefit based on these examples that we're giving. But the question as an investor as well is not whether this product is valuable, it's whether the company building that product is going to capture that value. Because we have seen in many industries that the inventor of the technology creates all the value, but all that goes to consumer surplus, and all the value is captured by the consumers, but not the company. And that all depends on two things. One is your distribution channel. Like, do you control that distribution channel? And then the second thing is that when you create value, do you have pricing power, and you can leverage your power to capture part of that value, right? And many of these innovations are B2B2C, and usually that is value captured to the business that you are selling to. The final patient is benefiting, but the economic value is captured in the one in the middle and not the one that invented the technology. So you have to be very careful with these things, and like first principles of investment, right? It's like, it's not about creating value, it's who's capturing the value. And for that, you have to leverage that. And then the second thing is how quickly you can grow these companies, because some of these ones, if they touch regulated pieces of the market, then it can take 3, 4, 5 years to build meaningful revenues. And as an investor, you want to invest in companies that if they do well, they increase in valuation. And doing well, it means like having some metrics to prove that you are doing well. Revenue is obvious one, but then scientific progress and product progress, sometimes like I don't know whether this is valuable or not. So you have to go back to first principles about what is a good investment, not what is a good solution for the society.
Eventually, I like a quote from my friend Uri Levy, who is founder of Waze, which was sold to Google. And I'm still using Waze instead of Google Maps, as it's more fun and better app. Thanks to Google, they kept the app as it was built by Uri. He wrote a book which is named, I think, Don't Fall in Love with the Solution. Fall in love with the problem, right? So you just need to consider problem, not a solution. If you fall in love with the solution, you will never end up doing something great. And I totally agree that in today's world, creating a product is simple or simpler, right? Another great friend of mine who is also 4 times co-founder and building up a new company, he said to me once, and he was at my interview, Michael Pichatnikov from Israel, he said to me, well, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I started my first company when I was 17, the most difficult thing was to build a product. And once you built a product, it was easy to sell, because when the product is there, there was always a demand from the market, because you were the only one who succeeded to build it. Now, when you join like the club, when you start doing something, you immediately see like 150 people doing the same thing already. So you open a door, you think that this is a fantastic niche. No way. I mean, this niche is occupied. It like the innovation, like a virus. It's spread over so many different industries, so many different niches. Now building up a product is almost nothing. Now selling the product and leveraging what you exactly mentioned, this bargaining power of a pricer, of a intermediator who keeps the customer like within itself, right, is the most important thing. And I totally
Absolutely.
agree.
Yeah. No, like I always tell people that one thing is building innovation, the other thing is building a business. And business innovation becomes a business when you build a product that is being adopted. And if it is not adopted, that is not a business. That is just innovation.
Right, totally true. Yeah. So my last question, Inaki, and it was amazing dialogue, but we need to wrap up. If you look into the list of the most capitalized companies 50 years ago, even less, 40 years ago, and if you look into the list, today list of the most expensive companies, at least in the US, you would see that out of 10 companies which are on the top of the list today, 8 didn't exist 50 years ago. They just didn't exist. Well, since innovation is intensified now and the life cycle of innovation is shorter, I may predict that in next 25 years, we will see another 8 companies which are not yet born today, which will be on the top of the list, right? You can also argue that this is not going to happen because these companies who are now on top of the list, they learned from the experience of others whom they disrupted, that they should innovate constantly, right? Walmart could have become Amazon for 20 years, but they watched Amazon and they didn't become Amazon. Google could have become a Facebook or capture this market for 5 years. They tried hard, they never ended up succeeding. So there is something there, right? But it looks like these big tech companies, at least, they learned that it's not stable, right? If you look into NVIDIA strategy, it's rapidly becoming a software company. They understand that they will end up where IBM or Cisco ended up, or I don't know, whom else to like give as an example, right? I mean, they will end up as Telca, for example, Verizon, right? So they will end up as an infrastructure that doesn't have any add value because of that very same reasons we just mentioned recently. So do you think there is a room for new companies to be on top, or big tech learned how to finally keep innovating and not missing it out? Do you think that we have a chance, like you and me as investors, to see these companies raising to the top, or you think that this battle is going to be lost finally by big tech folks? So, I mean, we still can be rich, right? I mean, we still can. Our companies will still ring the bell, or our companies will be sold to those big tech. My question is there a place there for like truly largest companies in the human being universe to be built, or incumbents learned how not to get like these new companies disrupting them?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I think that they have learned the lesson, right? That like if there is a fast pace of innovation, then you have to adapt very quickly and make bold bets. And to make those bets and try to be successful, you have to attract talent. And what has happened during the last 5 or 10 years is that Google, Meta, Tesla, NVIDIA, they continue paying very high salaries, attracting talent, and making those people work on exciting areas and not being afraid of making mistakes, right? And why is that? In many cases, because either they are founder-led or like people that were part of the founding team, right? Like think about NVIDIA, like Jensen was the founder. Meta, like Mark was the founder. So Mark, like spent what, 40 billion in the metaverse? That didn't go anywhere yet. Maybe it goes like in 5 years, but any other CEO would have been pushed out, right? But he's like able to do that, and that is fine, right? That they're still a $1 trillion company, right? And he does whatever he wants. Like Sergey and Larry, they are still involved with Google, despite that they are not the CEO. Like Bill is still like kind of like advising Microsoft. Like Elon is at Tesla. So you see that like You have, like when they are told, it's like there was this famous paper from Sequoia, like, does it make sense to spend like $60 billion that Facebook or Meta announced for data centers this year, or Microsoft $80 billion? Is like, this doesn't make any economic sense, but for them it's like, this is a bet that they have to make and a place. And if I'm wrong, so what, right? Like, it's much more expensive not making the bet and being wrong than making the bet and being wrong. So like they're very aggressive, and that was not seen in the 90s with Hewlett-Packard and IBM, or with Nokia, or with like BlackBerry and Motorola. This was like the CEOs were too concerned about, well, like, I have to manage this. I'm a farmer, I'm not a hunter, right? But these are the builders, like even like the CEO of Amazon has been there forever, right? Like the best buddy of Jeff Bezos. So that makes a big difference, right? And that is why they continue attracting talent. If they stop attracting talent, it's all about the people, right? If they stop attracting talent, that is the end for them. But is there room for others? We have seen that for OpenAI. We have seen this for XAI. We have seen this for Anthropic. We are going to see a bunch of other companies raising. Are they going to be $1 trillion companies? I don't know yet, but like, I'm happy with 100 billion, right? Like Uber is 200 billion now. Like Coinbase is more than 50 billion. Okta, like all these companies are, like 20 billion compared to 1 trillion is nothing. But in our world, building a $20 billion company is a success.
I agree. And I hope that this cycle of renovation will continue, that there will be room for new companies. That's my bet. I believe that we will see at least half of the list in 25 years, companies which do not exist today. And I wish my bet is that I don't know if they're going to be 1 trillion, but if they are 10 billion, they're going to build to 10 billion very, very quickly. At the speed at which you can innovate and build value and adoption is going to be significantly faster than the internet days or the mobile days or the SaaS days. And that is the exciting part. Okay, so we have to finish now, but I'm sure, Inaki, I will invite you to another call, because we haven't discussed so many things, for example, AI and education, which I'm fascinated about. So that was Inaki Berenguer. So my friend and exciting entrepreneur, founder of so many great companies and a venture firm, LifeX, and I just wanted to thank you for your time, for your really insightful, very inspirational thoughts and ideas, and I'm very proud of being your friend and being your supporter. Thank you. So this was a podcast brought to you by Victor Arlovsky, Ventures from the Valley, and R136 Ventures. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ventures from the Valley is brought to you by R136 Ventures. To find out more about R136 Ventures and how we scale mid to late stage startups by unlocking their true potential through investment, visit r136.vc. We will be back soon. In the meantime, make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any further episodes. On behalf of our team here at R136 Ventures, thanks for listening.